Have you seen this meme online? It's a little kid in the park with his dad.
It's a fundamental difference in our approach. We have a balanced approach. He has a simple approach.
Well, it's officially on. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has called an election for April 28th. And in this video, I'm going to show you the similar but different dueling announcements from Liberal leader and Prime Minister Mark Carney and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, showcasing what I think is a key difference in approach between the two leaders. I'm also going to get to later on something that I would like to see but am not expecting, and this relates to an announcement that is expected from Mark Carney soon. So let me first start with where the race currently stands, which is much different from where it did stand, and I'll get to that graph in a second. But Liberal leader and Liberal Party sitting at 39%, or 39.6%, Conservatives at 37.3%. And this is a shift of 2% from yesterday. When I was prepping this video, I had to refresh the page, and he's up 2%, or I should say the party's up 2%. So they continue to rise. The NDP, which I will not be discussing much of in this video because unfortunately they are where they are. 10.1% down considerably. Jagmeet Singh, I expect him after this race, assuming things continue on this path, and it appears that they will. It's hard to imagine things are going to change for the NDP at this point. I imagine he's going to step down, and there's going to be a leadership contest there because there needs to be a new direction for the party. But that said, it's important to note that a lot of what the Liberals did that was successful over the past 10 years have been, at least in part, because of the pressure from the NDP. Things like expanding dental care, expanding pharmacare. A lot of the help during the pandemic was because of what the NDP, the pressure they put on the Liberals. So it's important to note that. That said, in terms of discussing the politics of this race, it's not all that significant. So this is projected to currently give the Liberals a majority. Conservatives sitting at best with a minority government if they were to win. This as like the fact that the Liberals have been in power for 10 years and they are on pace for a majority is noteworthy. That said, it's also worth mentioning that a big part of this shift is because Trudeau stepped down. So once that happened and then Trump was inaugurated and did all his crap, there was a major shift in how everything looked. As you can see, huge jump for the Liberals since early January. Again, when Trudeau stepped down and there was a leadership race that eventually Mark Carney won, and the 21st, when Trump was officially the president. So big shift there, and it's only hurt the Conservatives and the NDP as the Liberals have benefited. Now, this gets to the first announcements that each of these party leaders made. The dueling tax cut proposals. So this would not necessarily be my approach. That said, I do want to showcase the differences here because it's easy to see this and think, oh, this is just a way for each of these leaders to try and win some voters over with a tax cut. The reality is there is a very different approach to how each of these view government. So first, let me play these dueling tax cut proposals, and then I'll get to how they both differ with their own clips on that as well.
Today, I'm proposing a middle-class tax cut to help all working Canadians get ahead. We will cut the lowest income tax bracket by 1 percentage point. For a middle-class tax cut that will benefit a two-income family by up to $825 a year.
Today I'm announcing that Canada First Conservatives will cut income taxes by 15% for the average worker or $2,000 for the average couple.
You can already see the differences between how Pierre Poilievre approaches announcements and Mark Carney. Now, this isn't the difference that I want to highlight here. I'll get to that in a minute. But look at the language here. So Mark Carney cutting the lowest tax bracket by 1%. That's easy to understand. Pierre Poilievre, a lifetime politician, puts it a different way. So you're thinking, oh, 15% tax cut, that's crazy. It's actually 2.25. It's 15% of 15%. So it's going down from 15% to 12.75. But the way he frames it, including on here, cut income tax 15%. Such a politician way to announce this. Again, I think this doesn't look good on Pierre Poilievre because it showcases him as your typical politician who's going to frame things in a way that sounds best for him, when Mark Carney is just speaking plainly, hey, we're cutting it by 1%. So it's just a clear difference between somebody who's been in government his whole life and someone who hasn't. Now, this gets to the different approaches. So while these are both tax cuts that are very similar, there is a difference in how Pierre Poilievre views government versus Mark Carney. So first, I want to show you this clip from Pierre Poilievre. And as Stuart Benson writes here, we've already reached the explaining online memes portion of the rally.
Have you seen this meme online? It's a little kid in the park with his dad. And the little munchkin is asking Dad, what is an income tax for? And the child is looking heartbroken as the dad explains to him that an income tax form is the opposite of a high school report card. He says, the better you do, the more you get punished, right? You know, it's the income tax is the fine you pay for the crime of working hard. Well,
this is incredible, because this both shows the clear difference between Pierre Poilievre's conservatives and everybody else, but also how stupid this perspective is. Because even in that meme that he shares, it undermines the point that he is trying to make. It is a kid with his dad in the park. Who paid for that park? Who paid for the roads that you took to get to that rally? In fact, who paid for your salary over the past 20 years you've been in government? It's just, the hypocrisy is remarkable. This is a view that is very similar to how Republicans operate, viewing government as in the way, as opposed to a way to lift all of us up. So if you're a Canadian and you've been to the US, you've noticed the difference in the quality of the roads there, the infrastructure versus here. You've noticed the difference in the level of garbage, the poverty, the homelessness. That's what happens when there isn't proper investment into society. Pierre Poilievre wants to make Canada more like that. Is that what you want? So this gets to Mark Carney's vision, which again, I'm going to get to later, how I think he doesn't go far enough in certain cases. But here he explains his difference, or the way he views his approach versus Pierre Poilievre.
Mr. Poilievre and you both unveiled middle-class tax cuts yesterday. He described income tax as the fine you need to pay for working hard. His tax cut is larger than yours. I'm wondering what you make of it, if you considered a deeper cut than the one you offered yesterday.
I think so. Thanks for the question. It's a fundamental difference in our approach. We have a balanced approach. He has a simple approach. I recall that Mr. Poilievre, when COVID began, his solution was, let's have a tax cut. His response with the tariff war and the revenue that the government is collecting from the retaliatory tariffs, he said, I'm going to use that to cut taxes. We say we're going to use that to protect workers who are directly affected by, and that's what we've done. That's what we've done with the changes we announced over last week. He said, and now he's backed it up with an initiative, that he will eliminate, not just cut, eliminate child care, eliminate dental care, eliminate pharmacare. He still doesn't have enough to pay. He's going to eliminate foreign aid while he's at it. He's eliminating the Housing Accelerating Fund. So he's eliminating affordable housing. And even with all that, he's getting this number. It's a everyone for themselves approach versus we're all in it together.
And this really is the big difference between the current makeup of the Conservative Party and the Liberals, is that the Liberals do support these government-run programs. Now, in my opinion, don't go far enough. Dental care, I think, should be universal, just like healthcare. Dental care is healthcare. Why it's not covered as healthcare, to me, is completely insane. But that said, they have expanded the dental care coverage, and hopefully that expansion continues to eventually include everybody. But this is the difference in approach, is that Pierre Poilievre wants to cut, while Mark Carney and the Liberals understand that there is need for these programs. But this gets to the real big difference here. And this is the level of investment that Mark Carney wants to do. So this will get to what I would like to see later on. But here is Mark Carney discussing how he views spending versus investing.
We're differentiating between spending less as a government, and I would recall that government spending has gone up around 9% on average over the last several years. So we're going to get that level of spending increase down. That in and of itself will create room. But what we're concentrating on is Canada investing more. It is time to build. It's a tremendous time to build out this economy. It's what we need to do to create jobs, higher paying jobs and growth. And we will use scarce taxpayers' dollars to catalyze huge private investment in the likes of opportunities that we discussed as First Ministers on Friday. And for those who didn't watch it, I can understand why people wouldn't have watched that, so I'll say it now. This is clean and conventional energy. These are new trade corridors. This is millions and millions of homes in this country to get the cost of new homes down for all Canadians.
This is what I find so interesting, because this is on his website, markcarney.ca. Spend less, invest more. So he is positioning investments into the public not as spending, but simply as investments. So the way he separates the two, operating spending represents ongoing government expenses. So, and by the way, he also mentions that they're going to continue pension, elderly benefits, employment insurance, child benefits, GST, HST credits, and disability savings grants. So a lot of stuff they're not going to change. The health transfer to the provinces, a social transfer. So that's going to maintain. But he's looking at how can we bring down the operating expenses of government, and that's separate from investments. So while they are still, this is capital investments are spending, but he's not positioning it as spending. He's positioning it as investments, because these are investments, or I should say, this is spending that benefits in the long run, that ends up giving more than it takes. So investments into infrastructure, into housing, into industry. So this is the approach that I think is brilliant, because you have here somebody who is an economist, was brought in to steer Canada through the financial crisis in 2008 under a conservative government, by the way. Then went to the UK to help them through Brexit. He's the perfect person to position this message, because nobody can really call him out here. You can't say he doesn't know what he's talking about, because clearly he understands how government runs, how economies function. So you can't call him out on this, meaning he is the perfect person to make these sorts of investments or do this kind of spending and simply call it investments. Call it what it actually is. This is the approach to government that government should take. Look at this stuff as not spending, but investing. This gets to, though, housing is going to be one of the biggest issues when it comes to, the next 10 years in Canada. So there's apparently going to be a housing announcement. Rachel Gilmore shares this out. Mark Carney asked about housing. We need to build affordable housing at a scale we haven't seen since the Second World War. My government is going to do that. He suggests an announcement on this is coming in a few days. Now, this gets to what I would like to see versus what is actually going to happen. Let me tell you first what is actually going to happen, because it's already kind of on here. They're going to have initiatives such as a housing accelerator and other capital-focused housing investments. They're going to invest in private spending, private investment into to build housing. What I would instead like to see is what a place like Vienna has. Vienna is known as the world's most livable city, and the Austrian capital, as they write here, renters pay a third of what their counterparts do in London, Paris, and Dublin because of their robust social housing. This is government-owned housing where the rents are a fraction of where they are elsewhere. This would bring the cost of housing down. Do I expect this from Mark Carney? No. This is not the Mark Carney approach. That said, at the very least, this should be a part of the solution. I understand the desire to want to just build more housing generally. It's an important investment. At least that's the way it's been positioned for, decades. This is how you build wealth, is you buy a house and it grows in value. I understand that approach, and that's what we've done for so long. But there's also just the reality that people need homes and they can't afford them. And a great way to get them affordable homes is to have available to them rents that are affordable. And you do that through social spending in housing. So that's what I would like to see. And this is like, the script writes itself. Canada, we have been dependent on, or we have compared ourselves to the US for too long. It's lowered our standards in terms of what we should expect out of government, out of the public. We should instead look to other countries. In Canada, we are a country that brings in people from all over the world. Why don't we bring in the best ideas from all over the world? Look at housing in Vienna. Look at the strong labor rights in Denmark and Norway. Look at healthcare and who does that best around the world. There are a variety of ways that we can improve this country by looking outside of our borders and looking at who does it best in whatever industry. It's the perfect time to do something like that as we are trying to separate ourselves from the US.